On March 27, 1977, 583 people lost their lives in the deadliest accident in aviation history. It took place entirely on the ground, occurring in a matter of seconds. The chain of events began with a terrorist bomb at Gran Canaria Airport. The resulting shutdown forced dozens of international flights to divert to Los Rodeos, a small regional airport on the neighboring island of Tenerife. Among the diverted aircraft were two Boeing 747s. KLM Flight 4805 from Amsterdam was commanded by their chief flight instructor, Captain Jacob Veldhuizen van Zanten. Pan Am Flight 1736 from Los Angeles was commanded by Captain Victor Grubbs. Los Rodeos was never designed for this much traffic. With the airport overwhelmed, controllers were forced to park the massive diverted jets directly on the main taxiway. This is a map of the airport. With the parallel taxiway blocked by parked aircraft, planes had to taxi directly down the active runway. This bottleneck trapped them, transforming the runway into a two-way street. When Gran Canaria finally reopened, the Pan Am crew was ready to leave immediately. However, the KLM 747 was parked directly in front of them, physically blocking the only path to the runway. Aboard the KLM flight, Captain Van Zanten was under immense pressure. Strict Dutch regulations meant that if he exceeded his duty time limits, he faced personal prosecution and the loss of his commercial license. To save time later in the day, Van Zanten decided to fully refuel his aircraft right there on the tarmac. The refueling took 35 minutes. Beyond the delay, the extra fuel added massive weight to the jet, which would require a significantly longer distance to lift off. This 35-minute wait allowed a shifting weather pattern to align perfectly with their departure. During the refueling, a thick mountain fog rolled across the airport. Visibility dropped from miles to mere meters, turning the runway into a gray void. Los Rodeos had no ground radar. Controllers relied entirely on visual tracking, but with the fog, they could no longer see the runway or the planes. Pilots and controllers were now entirely reliant on a single radio frequency to mentally map the location of the massive jets. KLM was instructed to taxi and turn around at the far end. Pan Am followed, told to take the third exit. But the third exit required an impossible turn. In the thick fog, Pan Am logically assumed the controller meant the comfortable fourth exit. Both planes were now moving toward each other on the same runway, invisible to one another and invisible to the tower. At the end of the runway, Captain Van Zanten pushed the throttles forward. His first officer immediately stopped him, reminding him they did not yet have ATC clearance. It is a critical distinction in aviation. A route clearance dictates the flight path in the air, but it is not a permission to actually take off. The first officer radioed for the route clearance. While reading back the complex instructions, he added the non-standard phrase, "We are now at takeoff." Before his first officer even finished speaking, Captain Van Zanten released the brakes and began the takeoff roll. In the tower, the controller replied, "Stand by for takeoff." Simultaneously, Pan Am radioed a warning, "We are still taxiing down the runway." Because both mics were keyed at the exact same fraction of a second, the radio signals collided, a phenomenon known as a heterodyne. In the KLM cockpit, both the tower's "stand by" and Pan Am's warning were canceled out. They heard only a 3-second electronic squeal. The KLM flight engineer briefly questioned if Pan Am was clear, but Captain Van Zanten dismissed the concern with absolute certainty. The hierarchical authority of the captain, combined with a microsecond technical glitch, removed the final barrier preventing the collision. A moment later, the KLM jet emerged from the fog at over 100 miles per hour. It sliced through the roof of the Pan Am fuselage, creating a fireball that claimed 583 lives. Tenerife exposed a lethal vulnerability. Even with a mechanically perfect aircraft, a breakdown in human communication could be cataclysmic. This led to the strict standardization of aviation English. The word takeoff is now spoken only when the final, immediate clearance to leave the ground is issued. It also led to the creation of Crew Resource Management, or CRM, which dismantled the absolute hierarchical authority of the captain. The ultimate legacy of Tenerife is a global protocol where junior officers are trained to actively challenge their superiors. This shift created a system of checks and balances designed to catch a single individual's mental error before it results in disaster.